I'm Freddie Adelman. I head up the Smithsonian Associates, and it is my tremendous pleasure to welcome you here tonight as we honor Katie Couric with the John P. McGovern Award. Finding just the right person for this award has been a labor of love, and this conversation with Katie Couric aligns perfectly with the John P. McGovern Forum for Ideas. This is a forum that provides a platform for civic public conversation with a broad range of professionals whose work bridges the sciences and the humanities. The late Dr. McGovern was a gifted physician. He was an inventive educator, a generous philanthropist, and most of all, a dedicated humanitarian. He believed in the health and well-being of both the physical body and the human spirit. He understood and told his student physicians that to be properly educated, to practice their art, it is essential that knowledge of the sciences be supplemented by familiarity with the humanities. He recognized a like-minded focus in the educational work of Smithsonian Associates. He knew that our multifaceted programming sparks curiosity and learning for people of all ages. Dr. McGovern's belief in our work and the generosity that makes this award possible are legacies for which we are deeply grateful. To introduce Katie, please join me in welcoming Julissa Marenko. My colleague is the Assistant Secretary for Communications and External Affairs. She co-chairs the Smithsonian's American History Initiative because of her story, and she represents the Smithsonian on the Women's Suffrage Centennial Commission. Please welcome Julissa to the stage.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Freddie, and thank you for your leadership. Smithsonian Associates would not be what it is if not for the leadership of Freddie Edelman. So if you could join me in giving her another round of applause. And thank you to everyone for being here, as well as our members and those hopefully would-be members. I'm honored and delighted to be a part of today's program, which aligns perfectly with the Smithsonian American Women History Initiative because of her story. The goal of the Smithsonian's American Women's History Initiative is to amplify women's voices, to honor the past, to inform the present, and to inspire the future, inspire generations of young women, young boys, and across our country to better know and better understand American women's history. Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate that. I encourage you to visit all of our museums so that you could see different aspects of Because of Her Story, women leaders, historical figures that you may be aware of or you may not be aware of across all of our different museums. You might say that today's honoree, this journalist, writer, and producer, tonight's evening's award recipient, has spent her career in conversation with America. When I think of American women's history, I think about this honoree. As she stated recently in one of her newest projects, a podcast from iHeartRadio, she explained that she wants to take on topics that have exploded on the national stage but are confusing to people, adding that she finds that she can get so much information in bits and pieces, as we all do, but she wants to connect those dots. Connecting those dots and channeling talk into thoughtful conversation and conversation into insights is exactly what Katie Couric has done for us throughout her time in the national spotlight. No matter how uncomfortable or controversial the topic, we as a country have learned to trust Katie Couric. Her message is clear. This is something that we can talk about and learn to better understand. And what better voice to help us better understand these tough topics in this ever-challenging, ever-over-consuming media environment. It is my pleasure tonight to be with you as we honor her this evening. Please join me in celebrating the many contributions that Katie Couric has made to shaping, elevating, and enriching America's national conversations as she joins the ranks of the recipients of the John P. McGovern Award. Thank you. Thank you, Katie. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you a friend of my person, but additionally so a friend of the Smithsonian, Miss April Ryan, correspondent. For those of you, yes, please, a round of applause for April. I will tell you on a personal note, having worked with April, she's one of the best in the business. This is not on my paper, but she is one of the best in the business and an advocate for the Smithsonian, so I'm very happy that she's here to help us out today. Officially, April has been covering urban issues from the White House for the White House, a position she's held since the Clinton era. You don't look that old, April. You look much younger than that. Reporting for American Urban Radio Networks and through her Fabric of American News blog, she delivers to her readership and listeners including millions of African Americans and close to 300 radio affiliates, a unique urban and minority perspective on the news. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming April as she leads us.
The purpose-driven, amazing Katie Couric. You're in radio, and then you went into television, and
I figured if my face wasn't going to stop a clock, it was much more lucrative to go into television.
Yeah,
so I was like, I want to do that, and that was when, women were really starting to enter broadcasting and fully integrate these networks. And so I was excited, and I always say that I got into TV news when harass was 2 words instead of 1.
Ooh. She's got the lines tonight. Drop the mic, drop the mic, drop the mic, drop the mic. So, and then walk away. So Tim, and when the time that you're talking about is so important because for Tim Russert to recognize you as a woman, to go to the Pentagon, because the thought is in this business, men talk to men. And how is a woman gonna know about the tank versus the missile versus the this versus the that? And you rose from that. I mean, that was huge. And you didn't know anything. And you reported your butt off, I'm just gonna say.
Well, I had a lot of really good men help me along the way. And I don't like this demonizing of men that's
No, it's
happening.
not demonizing, but for women to get in some of these places, it's not a glass ceiling, it's still a marble ceiling. You can break glass.
Right.
But you got to chip hard at that marble.
Yeah, but I think the point I was making is like Fred Francis, Tim Russert, Don Farmer, the aforementioned Don Farmer. Many of these, I think, people saw talent and they didn't necessarily see gender, and they really helped me along the way,
I like that.
which I'm grateful for.
Yeah, I like that. So let's move from the Pentagon to today. You were the one, I'll never forget, and every time they replay it, it's you announcing 9/11. You were the person who told us 9/11 is, I'll never forget it. And then when that second plane hit, you were the one talking about Columbine, You were there for some of the most major moments in history. If I'm correct, you were also there when we didn't know who our president was going to be.
In 2000.
In 2000, you remember that?
The hanging Chad.
The hanging Chad, pregnant Chad, dimple Chads, all the Chads. Remember that? Florida. But
I remember Tim on his whiteboard writing Florida, Florida, Florida.
Yeah, yes, and I was in Nashville, Tennessee with Al Gore at the time, and when they gave, was it Peter Jennings? They gave. He said, Gore's got Florida, and then they pulled it back.
Right.
Oh, that was the worst moment in history in Nashville. It was a silence throughout the whole city. And then remember when Al Gore said, I'm gonna go and concede, and then he came back. Remember that?
Yeah.
That was drama. We never thought we'd see that kind of drama ever again. I digress. So anyway, but those big moments, I mean, you were the face for so many of us. Think back to that time. I mean, that was an awesome responsibility. We woke up with you telling us the impending dangers that we were in, the things were, I mean, from the good news to the bad news. Talk to us about that.
Well, it was obviously an incredible experience to be at the helm of that show for 15 years. And you do feel like you have a front row seat to history. And, you know, I just had an incredible time because I think we were very serious on that show. We had fun. You know, I would dress up as Peter Pan and fly across the plaza. I started to hate Halloween after a while because honestly, I was just like, oh God, I have to do this again. But, you know, I think that I did a lot of really important interviews on that show. The situation in Columbine, where I interviewed Michael Scholes, who had lost his son Isaiah, and Craig Scott, who had lost his sister Rachel. It was an April morning, it was snowing, it was pitch dark. It was such a dramatic scene, backdrop. And then to see these two people who had just been in unspeakable grief and unimaginable pain kind of come together and share in such a raw way. It was actually very, very spiritual for me to witness it. And I was really just a facilitator to help them tell their stories. And then to do 9/11 and I've never felt such a huge responsibility to an audience in my entire career because I was panic stricken. It felt like the War of the Worlds. It felt like the world was coming to an end because you didn't know how many planes were involved. I remember during a commercial break or when someone else was doing an interview, I ran into the outside office from the studio and I called my parents and I told them to get in the basement because, you know, the Pentagon and all these things were happening in Shanksville. And, you know, as harrowing as that day was, what was even more harrowing, April, were the days following, where on these chain link fences all over New York were Xerox pictures of people and their families were desperately looking for them. The fact that the hospitals were empty because there were so few people who had been injured, who were needed tending to. That, to me, talking to those families was just an experience I'll never forget. And, you know, as I said, I've never felt such a huge responsibility to inform the public and to stay calm because I was like this the whole time underneath the desk because, you know, and I didn't know what it was going, it was just horrible. And I can't even think about it.
But you know what, I thank you for that. You know, because we've seen anchor people cry on television. This is real, we're human. To know that something is happening to the place that you felt you were the safest around the globe. And you delivered the information when the second tower came down. You were a pillar of strength for many of us who couldn't hold it together. And I think about Columbine. Columbine happened during the day, a school day, and then you cleaned it up the next morning. You know, I remember seeing, there was one picture that's still in my mind, and this was the Clinton years. This young man was trying to get out of the window, just trying to get out, and he was limp and just threw himself out of the window. You remember that? Trying to get help. Yeah. And you were the face and the voice of calm in the midst of the storm.
Well, you know, obviously, and gun violence and what's been happening across the country and especially in schools is been profoundly distressing and disturbing to me. And Sandy Hook, the fact that nothing happened after all those children were mowed down. I've become very friendly with many of the family members, despite the fact that more than 90% of the American people want to have more sensible gun laws. You know, and I have become more of an activist when it comes to gun safety in this country. And I did a documentary called Under the Gun, which really traced the history of the NRA. And, you know, so I've been trying to take some of these big topics that I have covered for years and years and try to bring more attention to them and help people understand them more deeply.
So where can we find that documentary on the NRA?
That was on Epix. I think it's still on Epix.
Okay,
and,
go to Epix.
On iTunes as well.
Okay.
And it's, you know, a lot of these families who'd lost their family lost their daughter in Aurora, and the Bardens who lost their son in at Sandy Hook, and all sorts of families participated and talked about what that experience was like.
So while we watched you on the Today Show, we got to know who you were. You made us laugh, you informed us, and we also cried with you. We saw your heart, we saw your family at a time when you lost your husband, Jay. He was diagnosed, and just months later, he succumbed to cancer, colon cancer. And you championed the cause, and you did something that wasn't ever done on television, live television.
It actually was not live. I'm not that stupid.
Oh, okay, wow. Well, we had an intimate look into who you are.
Yes, I brought whole new meaning to the term up close and personal. Yes,
Yes.
I did. You know, well,
You took the fear out of getting a colonoscopy.
Well, I mean, I'm getting one, I think, a week from Friday, so I'm not super jazzed about it. But, you know, you really have to do it. I really felt an obligation. Jay was just 41 when he was diagnosed. He died
So
9
young.
months later. Our daughters were 6 and 2 when he died. Carrie had just turned 2. And, you know, I think I just wanted to destigmatize and demystify a procedure that saves so many lives, that basically is able to stop this cancer in its tracks. And it's the second leading cancer killer of men and women combined in this country. And so if you all want to say thank you for me for
Thank
coming.
you.
You probably don't, but in case you do, just get screened and tell people you know and love to please get screened for colon cancer. The American Cancer Society just lowered the age for a baseline colonoscopy to 45 because they're seeing more and more colon cancer cases among young people. They're trying to figure out why. You know, whether it's obesity, whether it's overprescribing antibiotics. You know, they're just trying to really kind of unpack that. But please, please, please get screened. It's not, you know, it's not number one on your to-do list, but it could save your life. And I really hope that you'll listen to me and take it seriously. And you don't have to say if only, because by then it's too late. And it's really important to get screened. I'm getting one with my husband. We're doing his and hers.
Oh, that's so cute.
Isn't that cute?
That's so cute.
So cute.
Are you going to give each other gifts, colonoscopies, screening gifts, you know?
No, but we'll be posting a lot about it on Instagram, so stay tuned.
That's a good idea. So, you know, tragedy hit, and your daughters, how are they doing now?
They're doing great, thank you. Ellie is 28. She's getting, I know. I was like, she's getting married next July 4th.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, and
big fireworks.
And Carrie's 23. And first of all, I'm so proud of them because they're such nice people, first and foremost. And they're also smart and driven and slightly crazy, but you know, they get that from me. And Ellie's a writer for an Amazon show called The Boys about flawed superheroes. Not exactly my jam, but oh good, I'm saying. I don't think I'm the target
It's in the blood,
demo.
it's in the blood.
I'm not the target demo. And Carrie, who went to Stanford, sorry, I have to brag about that. Ellie went to Yale. I said if you guys want to go to my safety schools, go ahead. But anyway, so Carrie's working for Reuters.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
It's in the blood. My gosh,
So I'm
generation
so proud
after
of her.
generation.
She went to Columbia and got a master's in journalism.
Okay.
And now she's writing for Reuters and sends me her articles with her bylines. It's very exciting.
That's so cool.
So they're both doing really well. Thank you for asking. They're
Oh,
great.
Always. We watched them, you know, at that time.
Yeah.
And you also had another loss, another close loss, your sister.
Yes.
Emily.
Yes. I don't know if any of you all knew of my sister, but
A few years after Jay.
she was an amazing person. She was the real star of our family. There are 4 kids in our family. Emily was the eldest, and she was running for lieutenant governor with Mark Warner, and was a real rising star in Virginia politics. And many people really predicted she would be the first female governor of Virginia. Wow. Of course, I've been thinking about her so much after the election and what's happening in Virginia, because she would be super interested in that. But
There's a lot happening in Virginia.
She was very popular and really an extraordinary person. She was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer 2 years after Jay died. Ironically, Emily was the one who read the eulogy I'd written for Jay at his funeral, and then she called me, and I was in the green room of the Tonight Show. This is how weird my life is, and I'll never forget, I called her after I got done doing an interview with Jay and Leno, and she said, I have something to tell you, and it's not she said, I have something to tell you, it's not mom or dad, it's me. I have pancreatic cancer, and it's all over my liver. And she really fought hard. She really, but she died 2 years later. And, I think it just motivated me to do even more when it came to cancer research. And shortly thereafter, actually in around 2006, 2007, I started talking about creating an organization called Stand Up to Cancer. Yes. Because I had done a lot about colon cancer. I started the National Colorectal Cancer Research Alliance, which I think you mentioned, Jaleesa, and I decided I can't pay so much attention to just colons. That's right. I had to actually spread the wealth. And so I started this organization with 8 other women, and in 2008, so it's just over a decade old, and we've done, I'm so proud of the work we've done. We've basically, the premise behind it is to change the paradigm of cancer research and to focus on collaboration instead of competition. When I was calling about Jay and later about Emily, it was frustrating how siloed these research institutions were. And I said, what if everybody teamed up and shared their knowledge and their tissue samples? And wouldn't we help, cure cancer faster, come up with better treatments? So the whole edict, mandate of Stand Up to Cancer is collaboration, not competition. So we've worked so far with about 1,800 scientists from 180 different institutions involved in 180 clinical trials. And now we have, I think, we've contributed to 6 new FDA-approved drugs, and we've raised over $600 million. So it's been, I know, right? And I always think of that Margaret Mead quote, which I always get wrong, but we're never underestimate the power of a small group of concerned citizens to change the world. In fact, indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. I think it's so gratifying and exciting that these 9 crazy women who are so frustrated at the pace of cancer research could actually create something like this. And a lot of it goes to immunotherapy, which is such an exciting new field of cancer research where you bolster the immune system and kill the cancer. Anyway, it's very scientific and there's a lot to it, but it's really very promising and so many exciting things are happening, April, in cancer research, and I'm just so proud that we've played a small part in supporting scientists who are doing amazing work, who should be on the cover of People magazine every week. Anyway.
That's a whole nother story, but you're amazing. You're an amazing, amazing woman. Just sitting here listening to you and what you're doing.
Why, thank you, April.
You're very welcome. No, I'm serious. I mean, you've taken the responsibility that you have, and you've taken it into another realm to help people. You want to, I guess, empower people with news and information and empower them with health information as well. And with Stand Up to Cancer, it's not just pancreatic cancer or colon cancer, it's breast cancer, ovarian cancer, and certain kind of leukemias.
Well, it's all cancers. I mean, we're doing so, and all these different approaches, you know, nanoparticles and, you know, epigenetics, for example, is really studying how DNA behaves and how to penetrate sort of the hard protective shell that cancer has. And, you know, now what's really exciting too is it used to be very organ specific, but now, you know, they're finding that a drug that's helpful with melanoma may be helpful in childhood glioblastomas. So it's a very, very exciting, you know, Richard Nixon declared on the war on cancer so, you know, many decades ago, but right now I really feel like we're at the cusp of coming up with much better treatments and possibly one day a cure. So, it's really exciting.
I hope so. Just for my personal experience, my mother 13 years ago died of leukemia, and her sister died of leukemia 2 years before that. And it's in our families. You know, I've got aunts that have had breast cancer, they've survived. I mean, we all have it. We just watched on television, Alex Trebek. You know, he's dealing with pancreatic cancer.
I know, I've been talking to his team, and it's, you know, it's for every Alex Trebek and every public figure, I get asked by just complete strangers about helping them, or do I know anything, or is there a good clinical trial? By the way, another aspect of this, we have to get many more people involved in clinical trials.
Yes.
Because that's the only way, and it's such I think it's fewer than 5% of people with cancer actually participate in clinical trials. So I was thinking about teaming up with Google to make it a much more easier way to find clinical trials, because that's the way new medicines are actually approved and available to patients.
Yeah, so on that, and I'm going to go on to the next subject really fast. When it comes to clinical trials, is it an issue of trust? Because I know in certain communities, from history, some people are scared to do clinical trials because of trust, or is it just the fact that, no, I'm not going to do it? What is it?
I think it's a lot of things. I think there's a lot of misinformation about it and how they're conducted. I think people are afraid they're going to be in the, you know, one of the groups that doesn't get anything, but they don't
You get a placebo
get anything,
versus,
but they don't do that anymore. I think
Okay.
also clinicians are sometimes so busy taking care of their patients, they're not necessarily super well informed about what clinical trials may be available. So people have to really be their own best advocate. And the NCI has a website, but it's still very hard to navigate. So I was thinking at Google, you know, all these tech companies need to work on their reputations a little bit. So I was thinking that would be a great opportunity for some of these big tech companies to really do something great for humanity.
So here's what you do. You just walk in there and tell someone, I know your niece, and, you know, we do this. That's how you get it done.
No, now I just go, Sergey. Katie Couric here. He's like, what?
Yeah. So let's move on to another part of history that you made. You were the first solo woman anchor of an evening news program, CBS. Wow, history.
Yeah.
And now we have Nora O'Donnell, who is solo anchoring. What would you say to her?
First of all, I'm so proud of Nora and so excited. She's an incredible reporter and journalist.
I worked with her at the White House.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was a period where I guess I was the first, and then Diane came, and then a period of just all three networks having male anchors. So, you know, I would just tell her to focus on the news and not the noise. I think there's still so much sexism out there.
Yes.
And I think we're understanding a little more about cultural conditioning and implicit bias. I know that when I first started at CBS, I was really shocked at how much sexism existed, that they were talking about my jacket. They were saying I wore a white jacket after Labor Day, and I was like, it's winter white, it's tropical weight wool, and it's Armani, goddammit.
And for the record, you can wear for the record, you can wear white all year round as
That's
long
right.
as it's not linen.
Yeah, thank
Right?
you, April.
Yes.
Thank you. And
I'm the-
anyway, so
I'm the fashion police
they
tonight. Go
would
ahead.
talk about my hair, my makeup, even like female writers were talking smack about me, which really annoyed me. And of course, I was very troubled when somebody writing about Nora said she lacked gravitas, which really bugs me because, as I always say, I discovered that gravitas is actually Latin for testicles.
Ooh.
I think I'm going to take this show on the road.
I'm normally not at a loss of words, but
But anyway, what I would say is keep doing a great job. You know, I mean, the whole news business, as you know, April, is undergoing a massive transformation.
It's different.
In terms of how diffused it is, how fragmented the media landscape is, how often people are gravitating to media outlets that reflect their own points of view. And they, as a friend of mine said, they get affirmation instead of information. And I think there really is a bit of a crisis in media right now, and I hope that we're able to figure it out, because I think there's so much mistrust and all the way around when it comes to the media, and it's been a really difficult time for journalists, and I really appreciate the job that you do every day.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you. Thank you. So if that's the case, since we know that there's a difference, I mean, I remember back in the day when I used to watch the news with my parents, and my parents were ahead of time. Before we called people news junkies, they were just like in front of the news. And I used to remember seeing Walter Cronkite, that's the way it was. And we trusted him and believed him. We didn't think about his politics. We trusted him. Will we ever be able to get back to that? Will we be ever to get back to people understanding this is fact and then that's opinion over there? Will we ever get to that point?
I don't know. You know, I think the genie may be a little bit out of the bottle.
No, the bottle's broken.
You know, or for a lot of reasons. And, you know, I think that too often commentary is slipping into actual regular reporting, and I think that's made it very difficult. I would like to think that people respect viewers and their intelligence enough that they can tell them what's going on, the circumstances, and let them form their own opinions. And I think now when they're not hearing themselves from the people they're listening to, then they get mad or they go to another outlet. So I think there's some great journalism being done. Newspapers have had a renaissance. The New York Times is an amazing publication. The Washington Post is doing some terrific work. I think these are very, very challenging times because we have such an unconventional president, to say the least, and there's been so much disintermediation, and that means he can go directly to voters through his Twitter account.
Yeah.
And I just think social media in general has sort of coarsened our discourse. I say civil discourse has become increasingly an oxymoron. So I wish I had the answers, April, but I think, and I think we have to look at ourselves too and what we're consuming, and take some, consumers need to take some responsibility as well, because if they demand certain things and, let their feelings known, I think media outlets have to be responsive.
And I also want to add to that critical thinking. I think we all need to use a little bit of critical thinking in this crazy upside down time.
I also think that needs to be taught in school as well.
Exactly. Exactly.
They say, what does Cy Sims say? An educated consumer is our best customer. I sort of feel that's the same way with news. And
Yeah.
I think that we need to help people understand the world a little bit more. That's why I gravitated so much to doing documentaries. I was telling April I did a 6-part series for National Geographic on these very thorny social issues that are so divisive, to try to help people. People have opinions without portfolio. They have these knee-jerk reactions, and they're so easily influenced by what other people are saying. But once they have the information they need, then if they want to have an opinion, I say go for it, but don't don't say something unless you really understand the topic at hand. For example, I did an hour on Confederate statues called Rewriting History. And
That is a thorny subject.
and,
Very
you know,
thorny.
well, a lot of my friends, being from Virginia, my late husband Jay went to Washington and Lee. He was a Civil War reenactor. I wish I could talk to him about all these things, but, you know, I felt like people didn't understand really the provenance of these statues, the fact that many were erected during Reconstruction in the 1920s, that many of these schools were actually named after Confederate officers after Brown v. Board of Education. And I think once you understand that, and once you realize that, in my opinion, a statue in the middle of a town square like in Charlottesville, it does basically, I think, announce the values of the community to the rest of the people there. And so
And Charlottesville is somewhat kind of liberal.
well, the
Charlottesville,
university is.
In
but-
that little area, that main square is very liberal in that area.
Yeah, but you know, this statue was put up in the early 1920s, the day after the KKK came to town, and Birth of a Nation was playing in the Charlottesville movie theater. So, you know, I like to have conversations about people who may disagree, but I also like to try to connect the dots and give them information. And of course, I was in the middle of that horrifying Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. But I'm really proud of that piece of work because I feel like it illuminated a topic that people really didn't quite necessarily understand, the lost cause narrative. And, you know, I talked to a history professor, Gary Gallagher at UVA, and I think that's the kind of journalism we need more of.
Now, where can we find these documentaries?
So that is on Hulu. It's called America Inside Out. I did a political correctness on college campuses. You know, I couldn't understand cultural appropriation and what exactly that meant. I did what it's like to be a Muslim in America,
Wow.
white anxiety. I went to rural America to talk about the transformation from a manufacturing to a technological economy, and about and the demise of unions and a middle class wage. Anyway, it was really interesting, and I'm very curious about a lot of big topics, and it was an exciting project for me to do.
I could talk to you forever, but our time is winding down. I've got about 2 more questions, and we're going to take questions from the audience after we finish this portion. But I want
And yes, I should have worn tights. I didn't
But
realize
she's
it was
cute.
gonna be
She's
so,
cute.
I didn't realize it was going to be this cold.
She's
I
cute.
know that's what you're thinking. I know that.
So I cannot walk away from this interview without 2 questions. One, in 2006, you made history yet again. You were a little mavericky with a woman named Sarah Palin.
Yeah.
What did you ask her?
What did I ask her?
Yes.
I asked her a lot of things. I did 2 big interviews with her, one in New York after she had toured the United Nations, and then I did one in Ohio when she
But
was
you
on a campaign.
exposed her. You exposed her.
Well, you know, I actually,
Well.
no, I mean, honestly, my only agenda was to understand her positions on a variety of issues, and if in fact she had the experience to speak fluently about public policy. And so,
This crowd, I'm telling you.
so.
But she's right. As a journalist and someone who's trying to inform the masses of who she is so you can understand, that was the perfect thing and the right thing to do.
Well, I think she was in many ways a blank canvas. People didn't really know her background. And I felt a real responsibility to not expose her, April, but to really just kind of ask questions that required accumulated knowledge and the ability to be a critical thinker.
Well, she exposed herself then through your questioning, because give that question that you asked her.
What books and magazines do you read? Or what newspapers and magazines do you, well, that's a funny story because, I mean, we talked about the Iranian nuclear deal, we talked about tax policy. I mean, I asked questions, she didn't talk very much about that, but I asked her about what magazines and newspapers she read because I was actually just interested in what shapes what shapes their ideology, or and how they kind of form their views. And so I asked her that. She was so annoyed with me by then. She just wanted me out of there. And that's when she said anything and everything, or whatever they put in front of me. And I said, well, could you be more specific? Could you name a few? And I really think that, I'm sure she reads something. And I think she just was aggravated at that point. But it's funny to me that was the one clip that got so much attention.
Because
it was really just a throwaway question to get us walking and talking.
But and not only that, I mean, we remember, and I make a joke all the time, I can see Russia from here, and that came from that interview. You can see it from your house, but nonetheless, that was a historic moment, and not only that kind of shaped how we look at a lot of our political figures, and what is in your mind when you're thinking about this issue? How have you come to this realization or this conclusion? That is important when you are talking about possibly being the second in command of the greatest country in the world.
And I think at the time, John McCain had melanoma 4 times. I think he would have been the oldest president.
Right.
So I did feel a responsibility for
Exactly.
someone who was a heartbeat away from the presidency to make sure that she was informed. And so I was very proud of that interview, because I think it revealed sort of who she was. And what's interesting, I think that maybe it would not have the same impact today, because a lot of people would say, well, she's biased, or she's from this network.
That's true.
Or that
That's
network.
exactly right.
And I think back then it was still, a powerful
Yeah.
way to at least enlighten some viewers, or to help them make a decision.
And before we go to questions, I want to ask you one last question. You are an amazing woman. You're super bad. Super bad.
Why, thank you.
You're welcome. I mean, you just sitting, I could talk to you forever. We need to go to coffee or lunch or
Okay,
something.
maybe martinis.
I'm a novice at drinking, you don't want that.
Oh,
Anyway.
really? Okay.
But, or an amaretto sour, I like sweet. But here's what I want to ask you. Who are you today? You have come back through this, and through this great medium. You've reinvented yourself. You're not only television, but you're on the internet. You're writing a newsletter, and you're doing documentaries. But who are you? Who are you as this media woman? Who are you as this wife, as this friend, as this family member? Who are you today in all the spheres that you're in?
Well, I'm just trying to, I'm a workaholic. I love to work. I love to tell stories. And as the media landscape has evolved, I've tried to evolve with it. It's just very interesting. As I mentioned, it's so fragmented. My daughters get most of their information from podcasts. I don't think they ever turn on television. They're 28 and 23. And so I've been trying to figure out a way where I can iterate content and use it, sort of be multimedia. I started my own company. I have 16 people working with me. I don't like saying for me. I'm doing it with my husband, John, who's really funny and cute. You should follow him on Instagram. He's much funnier than I am. And a little sarcastic, though, so warning. And he doesn't like when people comment. He comments right back. He's kind of like the male Chrissy Teigen. But
Does he curse? Does
no,
he curse?
Okay. He doesn't curse. Maybe he does. But anyway, so we decided to start this company because I feel like I still have a lot to offer. I'm 62, but I really want to keep working. I relaunched my podcast called Next Question. I can explore a whole variety of topics, from ageism to online radicalization to vaping to CBD. Obviously, sounds like I'm into vaping and CBD, and I'm not, yeah. And, I interviewed Jennifer Garner and Julie Andrews. So that gives me an opportunity to have long conversations, like 40-minute conversations. And I crave longer conversations. I like to go a little deeper than, the 13-second sound bite. So I'm doing that. I'm doing a newsletter. please subscribe, you guys. It's called Wake Up Call. You just go to katiecouric.com. I'm in your inbox every morning. What could be better than that? And our motto is open it, even if you don't read it. Because we need high open rates. And then I'm working with, one of the things I'm really excited about is I'm working with purpose-driven brands. You know, it's very interesting. I'll do this quickly, April, but you know, the Edelman Trust Barometer and all sorts of other research has indicated that as trust in the media and government declines, people are actually looking to business, to companies, to be more socially responsible. And they're doing it, it's slightly self-serving because millennials are demanding it. They want to work for a company that cares about more than just the bottom line. But they also want to attach themselves to important issues like criminal justice reform, global warming, gender equality. So I'm working with brands that have been on the forefront of some of these issues in a very real and authentic way, like Procter & Gamble, like Ally Financial. I'm working with all sorts of companies. I'm doing some work with Orvis because my husband likes to fly fish. And so, you know, but we're doing really cool storytelling. And I even entered the scripted space. I executive produced a show on Netflix called Unbelievable about a rape case that was written about. It won a Pulitzer Prize. ProPublica wrote it. I highly recommend it. I had nothing to do with the production. I don't know if anybody saw it. It's so powerful, so important, and important stories can be told in all different kinds of mediums, April. And I think you have to get, you know, just have a portfolio, diversify the things that you're doing. That's what I'm doing. And it's really fun. And P.S., I love being the boss of me because it's still a boys' club at all the networks. No offense, but it is. And, you know, and I don't want to be at their mercy. If they, you know, want the new shiny object, I don't want to have to be the
Own
person.
it. Don't play at it. You're owning it.
That's right.
That's right.
I'm owning it.
That's right. And now we're going to take questions from the audience. If you have a question, please raise your hand. We're going to be civil and polite because this audience is awesome.
Katie, I wonder if you heard we had this little sporting event in Washington called the World Series, and I didn't know if you got any swag yet, but I brought you a hat.
Yes.
That is so nice. That is so nice.
Thank you so much. This was so exciting.
That's your pop of color with your black.
I know.
That's your pop of color
Don't
with
they
your
keep
black.
this on? Don't they keep this on?
I think, do you keep the tag? Leave it alone
Some
for a minute.
people
Don't-
keep the
I
tag
don't-
on. By the way, congratulations. I was so excited. But, you know, growing up in Arlington, I knew them as the Washington Senators because I'm so old. And I remember Frank Howard. And to show you how long ago it was, when I was in 7th grade, I got into a baseball game free because it was Hot Pants Day. And I wore hot pants with my friend Janie McMullen, and we got in free. I don't think they'd get away with that now, do you? Isn't that funny?
That's cute.
Yeah,
Hot
crazy.
Pants Day, yes. I don't think they want to have Hot Pants Day anymore.
Yeah, I don't think so
Yeah.
either.
Katie, a ghost from your past, Miguel Monteverdi.
Who's that?
You covered us in the Pentagon.
Who are you, sir?
Pardon?
Is that Monty?
Miguel Monteverdi, Monty, yes.
Hi, Monty. Oh, I'm
You
so
covered
happy
us,
you're
of course, in the
here.
Pentagon. Pardon?
I'm so happy you're here.
I wouldn't have missed it.
Are you still with the USO?
No, I'm retired now.
Aw. Well, I want to see you afterwards, so hi.
You worked so hard when you covered us in the Pentagon to really get to know the military people that you covered, which is why you so endeared yourself to all of us. You've had a good bit of perspective subsequently, and I'm just wondering what your thoughts are compared to those of us you knew back during the first Gulf War to military people that you meet today. What's with this politicization of the military? Has that really happened, or do you still sense that our loyalty is to the Constitution and not to
That's deep.
someone who is temporarily occupying the White House.
Monty. Clearly, Monty is retired. We'll discuss that later. I still deeply admire everyone in the military, and I think the American people do as well. How politicized it's become. I feel like, Monty, everything has become politicized, and I think that's sort of a sad state of affairs. And I think, I just wish, I know, I sound like Rodney King, can't we all get along? But I do feel like we all need to kind of have conversations about things and try to bridge some of these divides. And I believe deeply in the Constitution, if that's your question.
Yes.
Hi there. I'm also Katie.
Hi, Katie.
Hi. I just want to first off start by saying thank you so much. You've been just such a force in my life ever since I was a kid. My mom gave me your books to read when I was little, and just seeing somebody who shared the same name as me, who was a go-getter, who would just go out and say her name and just be heard was really cool.
I
And
think
it
you
was
need a
just
hug.
amazing.
Y'all need a hug.
I
Go
know.
hug.
And
I love you, Katie. So how old are you?
I'm 18.
Wow, do you want to come work for me?
I'd love to. Love to. I'm
Are
actually.
you off to college?
I'm actually applying to UV. I just applied early decision to UVA. I also want to thank you for the work that you've done for gun reform and the work in that area, because I'm one of the founders of Students Demand Action at my school. I started that this year, and
Great.
my school, our track is dedicated to one of the girls who died in the Virginia Tech shooting. She went to my school, and just growing up just being scared, just hearing things on the news every day, but having somebody like you in the media who was there for the students was really, really impactful.
Well, thank you, Katie.
And
That's so nice.
my question was that, sorry. My
No,
question,
keep going.
My question was for the students of my generation who've never known anything other than the political polarization, who the first time we voted, the first time we've seen debates been in this time of just complete political polarization. I was just wondering what advice you had for young women and young students like me who are trying to get into the political sector, who are trying to, understand what's going on right now.
And make a difference. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for your question. I bet April could offer some advice as well. I just think that, it's really important to stay informed and be educated and stay active. And but I thought what President Obama recently said was really an important thing for all of us to hear. And we were talking about it backstage, that there's so much judgment and shutting people off if they don't agree with you. And I do think that there's nothing can replace the ability to listen and to have empathy and try to understand someone else's point of view, because I feel like we're never going to make progress if we can't come together in some of these really important issues. And I feel like the anger prevents us from coming together. So I think I've always tried to have a great deal of empathy to understand why someone is the way they are or why they think the way they think, and to try to have a conversation and help deepen our mutual understanding of each other. So, but I would say get out there, sister, and change the world. And we're counting on you. So good luck.
That's true.
Hi, Katie. I love your podcast. I encourage everybody to listen to it. I'm here with
I'm doing this because the lights are so bright.
I'm here
like
with
the Nationals.
my sister and my 90-year-old young mother. I noticed when you introduced yourself, or one of the comments you made, you said your age, that you were 62. I'm 55. I listened to your ageism podcast, and it was quite enlightening. I wonder if you could share some of the things that you learned when you were researching that, because I think it's a topic we're not talking enough about.
Well, I think it's sort of the last socially acceptable ism in our culture. I think that it's something that I wanted to shine a light on. I interviewed for my podcast this woman named whose Instagram handle is The Accidental Icon. She's 66. She was a former professor at Fordham, and she is trying to kind of change our perception of people when they get a little older. I think AARP, or there was some study that showed only 15% of the images in media are of people who are older. And they're often shown sitting around, not doing anything. And, I don't know about you all, but I'm as active as ever. I get out in the world. I started a company when I was 61. I exercise, I take care of myself. So far, I still have all my marbles. And I think that, we just need to change people's view. I hear stories about, especially women in their 50s and 60s who get pushed out of jobs. And I just think it's really important to shine a light on it. And I hope that I'm a living example of somebody who can keep going and continue to reinvent myself. Into my 60s and hopefully into my 70s and 80s if I'm lucky enough. So you should, I thought, and the people on the podcast have all written books, and I think it's just a really interesting topic. People used to say about my dad, "Oh, your dad is so cute." And I was like, my dad isn't cute. My dad's amazing. My dad's brilliant. My dad's a veteran. My dad's, and we seem to infantilize, I think, older people in a way that's really disrespectful.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it is just understanding the implicit biases we might hold from cultural conditioning, not only when it comes to gender and race, but also when it comes to age.
Hi, Katie. First of all, I just want to say that you are adorable. So I'm very active with an organization called NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And 1 out of 4 people in this country either suffer from mental illness or know someone that suffers from mental illness. And I find it troubling how the media covers mental illness. Whenever there's a school shooting, it's always that the person has a mental illness. And I guess I just wanted to find out, from your perspective, what more could be done to help this, reduce the stigma that's associated with mental illness.
That's such a good question. Thanks for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
I think that sometimes people default to mental health or mental illness when there's an act of violence, where that's really not true. We're all, I guess, in some ways mentally ill, right? We all have mental health issues, but by and large, that is absolutely a red herring. Has nothing to do with school shooting and violence that has been committed. I mean, there's a lot of problems with alienation, and my documentary actually deals with this mental health issue. But I do believe the stigma is starting to be lifted. I don't know if you've noticed, but people, I think young people, are much more willing to talk about social, mental health issues, anxiety that they're experiencing. I think it's exacerbated by social media. And, Ralph Waldo Emerson says comparison is the thief of joy. And I think, these social media platforms just are so focused on comparing your life to other people's completely manufactured lives. So, I would like to actually do some work in this area of mental illness. With the number of girls who are committing suicide has skyrocketed between 10 and 14. So I'm very optimistic that people are at least talking about it more. And I'd love to, as I said, do more work in this area. Right now I'm working on a documentary on loneliness. Nick Kristof just wrote about it, actually, sort of serendipitously in the New York Times on Sunday. but loneliness and social isolation, I think, is a huge feeder into mental health problems. So I'm trying to attack it from a variety of angles. But that's a good question.
Hi, Barbara McDuffie. I'm here with 60 women from Commercial Real Estate Women DC, and we
Right
all
on.
love you. When I became, I got my first microphone in my hand in 1997. I went, oh my God, I want to be Katie Couric. So we all love you, and I just wanted to tell you that many of us are involved with Lombardi Cancer Center. 15 years ago, I helped start Lombardi Women, and we would love for you to come and be our guest in
I just
April for our
spoke there.
15th anniversary.
I just spoke at Lombardi, but I'll come back.
Thank you, thank you. I missed that because I was out of town, but I'm here tonight. So this is more of a comment than a question, but love having you here, and thank you
And
so
thank
much.
you all for coming. That's so nice. Thank
60
you, ladies.
women for
60
commercial
women.
real estate.
Wow.
I saw another hand somewhere.
We have time for one more question.
There's one. Oh.
This gentleman has been raising his hand
Yes.
all night, and
Yes.
yeah, sorry. It's really hard for me to see out there. Plus, I'm kind of losing my eyesight a little.
I was just wondering what your opinion was of the recent New York Times outing of the whistleblower, or as much as they knew at that time, and what you think the media's role should be in that sort of thing.
Well,
Is that clear enough?
April?
You are the guest tonight. There you go. Okay, let me say this. And I'm just going to be very blunt, and I'm not going to get political about this. But there are laws that a whistleblower is protected. And the unfortunate thing right now is that you have people out here who want to do harm to people who want to save the country or the democracy.
Or do the right thing.
Or do the right
Or
thing.
at least be transparent about what they witnessed.
Exactly. And the concern that I have as a journalist, as a person, we have a responsibility because the climate is so
Toxic.
and hyper-aggressive. I'm concerned. I don't want to put someone's name out there because they're saying it is, but we don't know for sure. And you put someone's name out there, their life changes for the worst. Take it from me, someone who has to have a bodyguard. It's a sensitive subject, and there's a responsibility as journalists to, when we write, we have to make sure we look at all areas. You don't want to put someone's life in jeopardy, but we need to tell the story. But I mean, at this point, it's speculation, because I've heard so many different names bantied about. And at this point, I'm just going to wait, and I'm going to write the story and tell the story. We know let's go with what they say. If they want to out themselves, let them out themselves. We will find out at some point who it is. But at this point, I'm just very concerned about their safety.
I also think, the social fabric of our country has to respect certain principles and guidelines and laws. And hopefully, that's something that all sides can agree on. But again, I think it comes back to where you're getting your news, how to be a critical thinker, who you're listening to, and really getting a full picture of what's happening and not relying on just one news source that's telling you what you want to hear.
So now we're back at the Smithsonian. Smithsonian, thank you for this wonderful evening.
Thank you, April. Thank you all
Thank
so
you,
much
Katie
for
Couric.
coming.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
We're very grateful that you came this evening. Thank you for your excellent questions, and we look forward to seeing you at our next Smithsonian Associates event. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Stay warm.